Good morning. It's Saturday, and I'm going to start Granny Shares in chapter 41 of Genesis. It says, "And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river." 2 full years after the butler had forgotten who Joseph was, forgotten that he had asked him to make mention of him unto Pharaoh and bring me out of this house. That's what he said over there in chapter 40. Okay, so let's think about Joseph in the jail 2 full years. I want us to do that before we go on, because I want us to think about how impatient we are for God to move. And sometimes it takes 2 full years, or 14 full years, or 30 full years. That's hard. It's hard to wait. I'm sure it was hard for Joseph, thinking any day Pharaoh's going to get me out of here. Butler's going to remember me or speak to him about me. And then after a while he realized he'd forgotten him. I'm sure he did. 2 full years. So remember that, those of you that are impatient for something. I shall. I'll try to remember it. I am not patient. I'll try to remember it. But you know, when you get 75, 2 full years is a long time about what you got left. Or, you don't, like when I was waiting for Michael to be saved 14 years. I don't have 14 years, I don't think. So, anyhow, I'm just talking about Joseph's patience that he had to have. Wasn't that he had a choice, he didn't. But that's the way it is. Sometimes we're serving the Lord decides he can let us wait, put us on hold, and we do, because we're his. Or whatever, however he wants to manage us, it's him, it's not us. He's our God and we're his servants. Hallelujah. Okay, back to the story. "And it came to pass at the end of 2 full years that Pharaoh dreamed, and behold, he stood by the river." Of course, we know the river was not the Nile in Egypt. "And behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine, or cattle, and fat-fleshed, and they fed in a meadow." Moses wrote this book. We hadn't talked about that, had we? But Moses was very smart and skilled at writing. And I like this verse where it says, just listen to it. "And behold, there came up out of the river 7 well-favored kine and fat-fleshed, and they fed in a meadow." You can picture it, can't you? He drew a picture with his words. "And behold, 7 other kine came up after them out of the river, ill-favored and lean-fleshed, and stood by the other kine upon the brink of the river. And the ill-favored and lean-fleshed kine did eat up the 7 well-favored and fat kine. So Pharaoh awoke." Woo! That was violent, wasn't it, for those ill-favored and lean-fleshed kine to eat up those fat-fleshed and well-favored kine. It was amazing, too. But it makes sense that these fat-fleshed weren't very hungry, but the ill-favored and lean-fleshed were so hungry they ate them up. "And he slept and dreamed the second time. And behold, 7 ears of corn came up upon one stalk, rank and good. And behold, 7 thin ears and blasted with the east wind sprung up after them. And the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears. And Pharaoh awoke, and behold, it was a dream. So this is harder to picture, but we picture it as corn, like we know. And I looked this up. At times I've tried to look it up because people say that wasn't the same kind of corn as we know. But they did have corn like we have. They did have corn like that. And so 7 ears of corn. The stalks have them like that and the ears are like this. That's why they call them ears, because the corn's growing on them. And so 7 ears came up upon one stalk, rank and good. So you can see those ears of corn growing up that stalk. And behold, 7 thin ears, little scrunchy ears that you can tell don't have much grain in it. But it says the 7 thin ears devoured the 7 rank and full ears. I don't know, in a dream it can be anyway. It can be their ears just opened up their little mouths and ate them up. I don't know. But Pharaoh dreamed that. And behold, it was a dream. So verse 8 says, and it excuse me, and it came to pass in the morning that his spirit was troubled. And he sent and called for all the magicians of Egypt, and all the wise men thereof. And Pharaoh told them his dream, but there was none that could interpret them unto Pharaoh. Nobody knew what it meant. Then spake the chief butler unto Pharaoh, saying, I do remember my faults this day. Pharaoh was wroth with his servants, and put me in ward in the captain of the guard's house, both me and the chief baker. And we dreamed a dream in one night, I and he. We dreamed each man according to the interpretation of his dream. And there was there with us a young man, an Hebrew, servant to the captain of the guard, and we told him, and he interpreted to us our dreams. To each man according to his dream he did interpret. And it came to pass, as he interpreted to us, so it was. Me he restored unto mine office, and him he hanged. Then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph. Woo! Finally. But you know what? Just in time. That's the problem. We think, finally. Like, you could have done it earlier than this, couldn't you? No. Finally. Just in time. I'm learning a lesson myself this morning about just in time. And so then Pharaoh sent and called Joseph, and they brought him hastily out of the dungeon. And he shaved himself and changed his raiment and came in unto Pharaoh. Now, this is interesting to me where it says he shaved himself. It seems when you look at the hieroglyphs, or you see things that were drawn on the walls that were Egyptians, they seem to be clean shaven, except some of them had a beard right here that grew down long. But it wasn't that they were just a whole beard. So it seems to me that when Joseph came out of there and they called for him, that perhaps all the men that were there getting him were saying, we got to get you cleaned up. And though the Jews, of course, they had their beards, they wanted to clean Joseph up to be presentable before Pharaoh. And so he shaved himself and changed his raiment. So I'm sure for him to stand before Pharaoh, they gave him some clothes to wear that were not rags like you would have in the jail. So that's what it sounds like. They brought him hastily out of the dungeon, and he shaved himself and changed his raiment and came in unto Pharaoh. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, I have dreamed a dream, and there is none that can interpret it. And I've heard say of thee that thou canst understand a dream to interpret it. And Joseph answered Pharaoh, saying, It is not in me. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. This Pharaoh believed in all kinds of gods, but Joseph did not even try to explain. He didn't explain who he's talking about. He just said, God. That's the way Joseph did. He took God to Egypt. God was with him. And God was there talking to Pharaoh. And there wasn't any thought of any other gods. There aren't any other gods. They're just all made up. Or the devil has pretended to be a god. So, when he said that, God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, one more point about that. God shall give Pharaoh an answer of peace. Joseph was preaching God's love to Pharaoh. We can preach God's love to people freely because he does. God will give Pharaoh an answer of peace. And Pharaoh said unto Joseph, In my dream, behold, I stood upon the bank of the river. And behold, there came up out of the river 7 kine, fat, fleshed, and well-favored, and they fed in a meadow. And behold, 7 other kine came up after them, poor and very ill-favored and lean-fleshed, such as I never saw in all the land of Egypt for badness. And the lean and the ill-favored kine did eat up the first 7 fat kine. And when they had eaten them up, it could not be known that they had eaten them, but they were still ill-favored as at the beginning. So I awoke. And he added a little bit of information right there. He added that it didn't make them fat. And I saw in my dream, and behold, 7 ears came up in one stalk, full and good. And behold, 7 ears withered, thin, and blasted with the east wind sprung up after them. And the thin ears devoured the 7 good ears. And I told this unto the magicians, but there was none that could declare it to me. The magicians. What's behind magic? The devil and deception. But Pharaoh had never run into what was behind Joseph. God. Now he's finding out about God. And Joseph said unto Pharaoh, The dream of Pharaoh is one. God has showed Pharaoh what he is about to do. The 7 good kine are 7 years, and the 7 good ears are 7 years. The dream is one. And the 7 thin and ill-favored kine that came up after them are 7 years, and the 7 empty ears blasted with the east wind shall be 7 years of famine. This is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, he showeth unto Pharaoh. There was going to be a famine in the land. And instead of just letting it come, instead of just let there be a bunch of good years and then here comes famine that would wipe it all out, instead of just letting that happen, God wanted Pharaoh to know about it. Now, who was this famine for? One thing it was for was Joseph. Can you imagine something worldwide happening in order to bless you, in order to help you? When COVID came, it was horrible. But it made us put our church services on Facebook. Made us put our songs on Facebook. Gave us this whole ministry. Did. So this 7 years of famine would be horrible for the world. But God has many purposes in things that He allows to happen. My husband was preaching right there at the beginning of COVID, and he preached for us to pray, for us to get down to business praying, and that COVID could have come for us to know that we better pray. The whole world learning the lesson about praying. So it wasn't just for us and our ministry, but it was for the whole world to learn a lesson about praying. And lots of other things were learned about turning to God for your needs and realizing that you're not your own. Realizing people that thought nothing can take me down. It did. It did take them down. I know lots of really good lessons that came out of it. So, this is the thing which I have spoken unto Pharaoh. What God is about to do, He showeth unto Pharaoh. I'm going to stop there, and Monday we're going to talk about what happened after that. You know, when I wrote my books, I always like to end the chapter with something that made somebody read the next chapter. I guess I'm doing that with Granny Shares the Bible too. Come back Monday. God bless you.